Welcome to Coach Eichner's Math. Today we'll be talking about circle basics, circumference, and area. So first off, we got to talk about what a circle is. It is all points equidistant from a given point, also called the center. It separates a plane into three sections: the interior, the exterior, and the circle itself. These are going to be important words for us: the interior, the exterior, and the center. If you look down below, this point I is in the interior. This point X is in the exterior. And this point C is the center. The radius is a segment with one endpoint on the center and one endpoint on the circle. C is the center, endpoint on the circle. This would be my radius. And a diameter is a segment that goes through the center of the circle with both endpoints on the circle. Now, the diameter is a special case of a chord. We should know that from our last unit. So, the diameter is a chord. It's a special chord because it goes through the center, which makes it the longest possible chord. Let me go ahead and finish writing center for you there. Looking down below, example 1 is going to ask us to name these things. So if I'm naming my circle, we're going to name it based on the center. So I'm going to call it circle Q. Or you could write out circle Q. Name all radii shown. This is just like a cactus. We don't say cactuses, we say cacti. We don't say radiuses, we say radii. So this is just the multiple of radius. So we're looking for more than one radius. Right now I see segment PQ. I see segment QT. And those are the only two that have a point at the center and on the circle. So those are the only two radii that I have. What is the length of any radius of this circle? Well, they've already got one marked. QT, they tell me, is 16 meters, which means that every radius is going to be 16 meters. That's the definition of a circle. From the center to the edge is the same all the way around. What would be the length of any diameter of this circle? Again, we've talked about this before. The diameter, well, you can think about it as a radius and a radius put together because they both go through the center and they are opposite rays. They go to opposite corners, okay, creating a straight line. So there'd be two radii, excuse me. So 16 becomes 32 meters. And name all interior points. So now we're going to look at it. We'd say that point R, point Q, point S are all on the interior. P and T are on my circle. So the exterior point shown, there's only one. It would be point X. So looking on, calculating the radius or the diameter as indicated. Well, the radius is 27. So the diameter is always going to be 2 of the radii. So if the radius is 27, 27 times 2 is 54 inches. If the diameter is 12, have to cut it in half to get to the radii, or get to the radius. So 12 divided by 2 is 6. And the diameter is 18.6 divided by 2 is 9.3 centimeters. Notice, guys, it is important that you put your unit of measure so that we know what we're talking about. Once you know the radius or the diameter of a circle, you can calculate its circumference and area. So circumference goes around the outside of the shape, and we can calculate that by saying pi times the diameter, or by saying 2 times pi times the radius. That makes sense because we just set up here that the diameter and 2 times r, or 2 times the radius, is the same thing. Looking at the area. The area formula, we're only going to have one, or we're going to say pi r squared. Looking down below, example number 3. find the circumference and the area of circle T as shown below. So as you look at that, the first thing you have to do is determine, do I know a radius or a diameter? If you don't know a radius or diameter, you can't go any farther. Lucky for us, okay, if you notice this square on the outside, it touches in two places. So the entire length across there would be 10 millimeters. So my diameter equals 10 millimeters. The radius then would be 5 millimeters. So finding my circumference, and I'm going to ask you to write this out, guys. It's going to be 10 pi, or when I type 10 pi in the calculator, (31.42 millimeters. I need to see the formula and the equation. So please make sure that you give both. Looking at the area. So the area is going to be pi r squared, which now you can type in your calculator and say pi 5 squared, which is 78.54 millimeters. Okay, I expect both pieces of that on your answer. So make sure that you're listing out not only what you get out of the calculator, but what you put in. Looking down at example number 4, find the circumference and the area of the circle below. Again, diameter is 18. Radius is 9. So we're going to go ahead and label it with units because they didn't tell me what my units are. So looking at my circumference, it would be pi d. We go ahead and say 18 pi. Or my area would be pi r squared. So head to the calculator, 18 pi. 56.55 units, and pi r squared 254.47 units. Moving on, I want you to try example 5 and example 6 on your own. Take this time to pause the video and work through them, and then check your answers. So the radius equals 4, that means the diameter equals 8. That's 8 pi, or pi r squared. Again, no units were labeled, so we're just going to call our units units. U is the same thing as saying units. Writing that down just to make sure those of you who aren't listening to this video like you should be can see that. 8 pi is 25.13 units. Pi r squared is 50.27 units. 22, r equals 22 units, d equals 44 units. So I would say 44 pi, and I would say pi 22 squared. Be 138.23 units, and area would be 1,520.53 units. All right, so let's look down here at number 7 together. They have done something a little tricky to us on number 7. We look at it, and we are trying to find either a radius or a diameter. And the one thing we have to notice is they did not tell us the measurement of the radius or the diameter. So we got to take a quick trip back and look at this. This is a right triangle, and I know two sides. I know both legs, and I'm looking for the hypotenuse, which we always call c, takes you back to a little formula called the Pythagorean's theorem. So I can say 15 squared and 36 squared equals c squared. So 36 squared plus 15 squared is 1521 equals c squared. So we got to take the square root. And we find that c is 39. So c is 39, that is the whole distance across. So the diameter is 39, and the radius then would be half of that, which would be 19.5. So that's just a little sidestep there. You're going to start seeing triangles show up over and over again inside of our shapes that we're working on. So be ready for that anytime you see a triangle. It might be a 30-60-90 or a 45-45-90 triangle. It is very possible that you could see any of those options. So looking at this here, we found their circumference by saying 39 pi, and we're going to find the area by saying pi 19.5 squared. And again, these are units. So typing it in our calculator. (122.52 units), or 1,194.59 units. So that's finding the circumference and the area. Okay, we're going to go ahead and take a quick break, and then we will be moving on and talking about the rest of our definitions. This has been Coach Eichner's Math. I appreciate you watching.